SummerSlam 2020 looks like it could potentially be the weirdest ever. With the world still struggling with the effects of COVID-19, WWE have been scrambling to find a location outside of the Performance Center to host the events. Several have been mooted, from a ship to a beach to the White House Rose Garden. Okay, that last one is made up, but the fact is that little is known about SummerSlam, and between exotic location choices and the likelihood of a cinematic match or two, it's going to be an odd watch. That said, the biggest party of the summer is no stranger to weirdness. In over 30 SummerSlams, we've seen some incredible matches and iconic moments, but we've also been witness to some bizarre booking and questionable match presentations. Whether it's a tasteless stipulation, a balmy storyline, or, you know, an actual movie character coming to life in order to wrestle, there have been numerous bewildering bouts on SummerSlam's past. As we prepare for whatever the hell WWE have in store for us this year, it's only apt that we go back and reminisce fondly about all the stuff we've previously seen that made us yearn for autumn to hurry up and get here. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic.com, and these are the 10 weirdest WWE SummerSlam matches ever. Join us. Number 10, Brock Lesnar vs. John Cena. When Brock Lesnar returned to WWE after an 8-year absence in 2012, his natural first opponent was John Cena, the man who had become the face of the company while the next big thing was off hammer-fisting people to death in cages. Somewhat incredibly, WWE actually sacrificed Lesnar in their showdown at Extreme Rules. I can only assume Vince had a recurring nightmare about declining t-shirt and wristband sales in the run-up to the show and got squeamish. After that, however, it was full speed ahead for our Viking Space Lord, as he smashed through Triple H, CM Punk, and ended the Undertaker's streak en route to a WWE title showdown with Cena at SummerSlam 2014. The build was strong, emphasizing the sports as much as the entertainment side of proceedings, and promised an epic for the ages. How strange was it then to see the Beast Incarnate absolutely maul his esteemed opponent, offering him barely an offensive move while taking him to Suplex City 17 times. The one-sided nature of the so-called contest, coupled with Teflon John doing a clean job, was totally jarring at the time, as it was the first time Lesnar had really done it and nobody expected it to happen in this environment. Number 9, Lex Luger vs. YOKOZUNA. WWE were left somewhat reeling by the departure of Hulk Hogan in the summer of 1993. With Tangerine Terry off to Tinseltown to play a nanny, the company were in sore need for someone to carry the jingoistic torch in his place. Looking at the roster, it made sense to have Lex Luger, until recently a narcissistic heel, fill in. After all, he was blonde, he was tanned, and he had those big, beautiful muscles that we require in our all-American heroes. After slamming Yokozuna on the USS Intrepid, Luger rode the Lex Express all the way to the SummerSlam 93 main event, where he would do battle with the pseudo-sumo for the WWE title. The match itself was fine for what it was, nothing great but not exactly terrible, even though commentary made you feel like you would be put on some sort of list if you didn't cheer for the man in the stars and stripes. It's the finish and aftermath though which leaves you scratching your head, as Luger used the steel forearm of doom to knock Yoko out and win the match by countout, meaning he didn't win the title, but he celebrated anyway. A lot, with all the other patriots in the back as balloons rained down. Well done on not winning the title, mate. Good job. Number 8, Brutus Beefcake and Hulk Hogan vs. Randy Savage and Zeus. I made a joke about Hulk Hogan's film career, such as it was, in the previous entry. Call taking a shot at Mr. Nanny low-hanging fruit if you want, but I could have easily thrown shade at Santa with Muscles, Suburban Commando, or No Holds Barred. Oh wait, this entry is about SummerSlam 89, so there'll be plenty of opportunities to discuss that movie masterpiece. In a bid to capitalize on the hype for the film, WWE decided to bring the character of Zeus from the silver screen to the squared circle for a blockbuster tag match. Teaming with Randy Savage against Hogan and who else, Brutus Beefcake, Zeus, played by actor Tony Lister, stood out like a sore thumb because he no-sold everything, only had one move, and, oh yeah, he was a friggin' fictional character from an actual film. I know it's wrestling and you kind of say goodbye to your suspension of disbelief when watching your first match, but come on now. Naturally, Macho Man did most of the heavy lifting for his team and the crowd went absolutely crazy for everything, so it worked, but the whole thing is just a bit odd, especially if you're not familiar with the storyline of the film. And if you haven't seen No Holds Barred, you can find it under the classic section on Netflix or on VHS at any reputable car boot sale. Number 7, Kane vs. Matt Hardy. WWE put the character of Kane through the ringer, didn't they? From Katie Vick to May 19th and all of the other absolutely mental stuff they had him involved with, it's a testament to Glenn Jacobs that the Big Red Machine has endured for as long as he has. On the scale of misadventures, kidnapping, impregnating, and then marrying Lita probably ranks somewhere in the middle. Of course, the red-headed temptress didn't tie the knot with the devil's favorite demon of her own free will. Oh no. Kane actually won the right to wed his woman by beating Matt Hardy, Lita's then real-life boyfriend, in a Till Death Do Us Part match at SummerSlam 2004. Considering the stakes, you might expect a knockdown, drag-out war filled with intensity, hatred, and drama. On the contrary, what we got was about 6 minutes of pedestrian action, which was easily won by the mayor of Knox County. Weird. So Kane got to marry Lita, because if you were a female performer in this era, you were just as likely to have the rest of your life bartered over as you were to wrestle an actual wrestling match. Number 6, Diva Dodgeball. Or if you're a WWE diva on this show, you're just as likely to be participating in a shoot dodgeball match. Right in the thick of the infamous diva search, WWE organized a game of 7-on-6 dodgeball between some of the full-time female performers and the wannabe hopefuls. Trish Stratus captained a team comprising herself, Victoria, Molly Holly, Gail Kim, Nydia, Stacy Keibler, and Jazz to take on Christy, Michelle, Maria, Joy, Amy, and Tracy. Amazingly, the contest was legit, and even more amazingly, the rookies handily beat the pros despite having a numerical disadvantage and being forced to compete in skin-bearing bikinis. This was just not a good idea, as it made the active roster members look inferior to a bunch of people that would most likely be eliminated and never heard from again in due course, even if WWE did sign most of them afterwards anyway. The boys in the locker room agreed, taking the losing squad to the infamous Wrestlers' Court, with Triple H acting as judge, Val Venus as prosecutor, and Ivory enlisted as defense attorney. In the end, the Divas lost this one as well and were forced to bribe the game with gift vouchers in order to receive a lighter sentence. Number 5, The Cat vs. TERRI. Of course, as we're getting weirder and weirder with this countdown, the role of the WWE Divas becomes more and more regretful. While Diva Dodgeball and Till Death Do Us Part are both odd things to be seen on a major wrestling pay-per-view, this offering from SummerSlam 2000 is something you'd expect to find on Channel 5 after midnight, just before a steamy prison set thriller. For all intents and purposes, the blow-off to their epic feud, the Cat and TERRI met in the first, and as far as I'm aware, only thong stink-face match. I mean, I hope it's the first and only one, because the existence of another would make me really upset. This was weird and ridiculous for several reasons. Chief among them is the fact that the ladies worked the match, if you want to call it that, in high-heeled boots and barely their bathing suits. And oh yeah, the object of the match was to rub your ass in your opponent's face. Predictably, the King had a field day on commentary, as his actual wife tried to do her best Rikishi impression, while JR called the action through gritted teeth. In the end, Miss Kitty won, but really, we were all losers here. Number 4, Shawn Michaels vs. Hulk Hogan. Shawn Michaels vs. Hulk Hogan was one of those once-in-a-lifetime, intergenerational dream matches that could only take place if all the stars aligned, and if the money was right. Brother! The face of the 80s squaring off with one of the top wrestlers of the 90s in the mid-2000s. It was strange to contemplate, but somehow it all made sense. The only place big enough to accommodate their egos was the main event of SummerSlam 2005, and considering the reputations of both men as backstage hellraisers, it was never bound to go off without a hitch. Indeed, HBK was so miffed at his opponent's behavior in the build-up to the match, as well as the Hulkster's refusal to return the favors further down the road, that he turned in an utterly bizarre performance that had the bouts verging on parody in parts. Bouncing around like a pinball on speed, Shawn made a point of treating Hogan like he was, I don't know, Zeus or something, flipping and flopping all over the place as a bewildered Hulk looked on in wonder. Naturally, things came to an end with the dropping of a big red and yellow leg, but after the match, all anyone was talking about was HBK's antics and trying to figure out what the hell they had just watched. Number 3, Eddie Guerrero vs. Rey Mysterio. Just how do you follow up a match where holy matrimony is on the line? What could possibly be more sports entertaining than two men fighting over the right to get hitched to a pregnant damsel in distress? Those were probably the questions that were asked by WWE Creative in the run-up to SummerSlam 2005, and boy did they find the right answer. Injecting the intensely personal Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero feud with a little telenovela drama, WWE decided to incorporate a storyline where Latino Heat was revealed as the biological father of current WWE superstar Dominik Mysterio. Uncle Eddie, motivated by pure spite, now wanted custody of the child. Cue lots of melodramatic acting and the introduction of Mysterio and Guerrero's real families. This being WWE, there was only one way to settle this, and after hammering out the details with Child Protective Services, a custody of Dominik ladder match was set for the biggest party of the summer. Sadly, the kid himself wasn't suspended above the ring, but he was stationed at ringside for the match, which was really good, but lest we forget, they were fighting over the custody of an actual child. Rey won thanks to an assist from Vicky as poor Dominik's summer holiday ended and he prepared himself for years of merciless bullying. Number 2, Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan versus Sergeant Slaughter, Colonel Mustafa, and General Adnan. Well, to be fair to WWE, they did market this one with the tagline, "The match made in hell." And there's nothing more hellish than having to sit through Warrior and Hogan fighting off a bunch of faux Iraqis. Having not learned their lesson from WrestleMania 7 earlier in the year, WWE went to the Gulf War well once again at SummerSlam for this weird handicap contest that had the candy-coloured babyfaces matched against 3 old and knackered blokes, one of whom was a former American hero, one of whom was an Iranian who changed his name and suddenly switched allegiance to Iraq, not a very likely story, and one of whom was a bloke who looked like he had his heyday in the 1950s, and was an actual childhood friend of Saddam Hussein. Oh, and Sid's there too as referee, in a tiny zebra-striped tank top and covered in enough baby oil to keep Johnson's in business for another week. The action was slow and rubbish and generally all over the place, and the weirdness is amplified when you know the backstory of Warrior, who leaves the match by running backstage with a chair, holding up Vince McMahon for a bunch of money before the show. And you know how this one ends, with a mighty leg drop and another victory for America, 6 months after the war had ended. Number 1, The Undertaker versus The Underfaker. I'm seeing double here, 4 Undertakers. So, how did we get here exactly? Well, it's simple. You see, The Undertaker, the real one, lost a WWE title casket match to YOKOZUNA at the 1994 Royal Rumble, after which the casket exploded and the Phenom ascended to the heavens. Live, in the arena, they actually had The Undertaker levitate, supposedly on his way to the great beyond. Anyway, after the dead man's apparent demise, Ted DiBiase brought The Undertaker back, only this one was a couple of inches shorter, a few pounds lighter, and less than half as talented. Paul Bearer then promised to bring back the real thing at SummerSlam, and a match between The Undertaker and The Underfaker was on. And it was rubbish. One of those that probably look better on paper. You can understand the logic, such as it was, in having the match, and hey, we got to see Leslie Nielsen trying to crack the case, but the match itself was a washout once the novelty of seeing long-haired tall boys in black punch each other had worn off. The Undertaker won, naturally, and placed The Underfaker in a casket, never to be seen again.